It all began with a handwritten letter. President Donald Trump had just concluded a veterans town hall meeting in Pensacola, Florida, when his aide handed him an envelope. "This came through local channels," she explained. "It's from a Navy veteran named Walter Caine." Trump opened it during the flight back to Washington, D.C. The letter read, "Dear Mr. President, my wife and I are both retired Navy officers. Together, we've served this nation for over 6 decades. We live in a humble home just beyond the naval base. If you ever want an honest conversation with real veterans, we'd be honored to have you over for dinner. Just the 3 of us and a hot pot roast. Sincerely, Walter and Marlene Caine." Trump stared at the letter, unmoving. Something about it struck a different chord. No demands, no criticism, no political motive, just sincerity and kindness. His team brushed it off. "We receive hundreds of letters like that, sir," his chief of staff said. But Trump placed the letter on his desk and gazed out the window. Something about it lingered. Maybe it was the aged handwriting, or maybe it was the word real. 2 weeks later, with little media attention and a scaled-down security team, Trump returned to Pensacola, not for a speech or a press event, but for dinner. He had accepted the invitation. Walter and Marlene lived in a simple one-story house, with navy blue shutters and a white porch swing that groaned with age. Tucked on Maple Street, their home was far from luxurious, but it radiated warmth more valuable than riches. As Marine One flew overhead that evening, neighbors gathered outside in hushed awe. The President of the United States was actually coming. Trump stepped out, dressed in a dark suit, his expression softer than usual. He waved to the stunned onlookers and made his way toward the small house with the worn sidewalk. Walter opened the door, wearing a faded navy shirt, standing tall despite the cane supporting him. Marlene stood behind, glowing in her patriotic apron. "Mr. President," Walter said, offering his hand. "Welcome." Trump shook it with rare genuineness. "Thank you for inviting me. I meant it when I said I wanted to hear from real Americans." Inside, their home was filled with history. Photos of Walter in uniform, Marlene in her officer attire, and medals displayed above the fireplace. The smell of pot roast filled the room. "I'm not here for politics," Trump said, as he took his seat at the table. "I came to listen." And listen he did. What he heard that night would stay with him forever. They toasted with water in 3 old glasses. "To service," Walter said, and they clinked gently. As Marlene served mashed potatoes and green beans, Walter leaned in. "Mr. President, we've seen many presidents come and go. Some talked big, others tried, but most never stayed long enough to truly listen." Trump nodded slowly. "We're not angry," Marlene added. "Just heartbroken." "Why?" Trump asked. Walter hesitated. "Because veterans like us are being forgotten." He pointed to a scrapbook nearby filled with old photos of comrades, many now gone. "Too many of our friends spent their last years alone, in silence, in poverty. Some couldn't afford medicine. Some died without a single visitor." "And some," Marlene added softly, "couldn't even afford a funeral." Trump's face changed. Walter continued, "We understand that the country has its challenges. Budgets are tight, but it often feels like those who gave everything are remembered only once a year, and even then, it's all just words." Trump didn't speak. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. He could see they weren't asking for sympathy. They were speaking on behalf of an overlooked generation. "And that's only the beginning," Marlene said, refilling his plate. "Let us tell you about our friends James and Ruth Carter. They lived next door for nearly 30 years. Both served in the Navy. Married, like us." Walter took a breath. "Ruth developed early dementia. James took care of her alone. No children, no family. When she began forgetting things, he just smiled and reminded her of better times." "One winter," Marlene said. James slipped on ice while fetching her medicine. Broke his hip. Didn't tell anyone. He crawled back inside and lay there. For 2 days. Trump looked shocked. "We found him," Walter said quietly. "Barely alive." Ruth was in the kitchen humming Christmas songs. She didn't know he was hurt. "They both passed within the year," Marlene added. The room went silent. "Why didn't he call the VA?" Trump asked. Walter offered a weary smile. "He did. Got an appointment. For 6 weeks later." Trump leaned back, absorbing the weight of their words. Marlene dabbed at her eyes. "That's why we asked you here," she said. "Not to blame you, not to shame you. Just to show you. Behind every veteran statistic is someone like James, like Ruth." Trump didn't touch his food again. He just listened. After a pause, Trump glanced around the photo-covered room. "You served more than 60 years between you?" Walter nodded. "Joined at 18. Met Marlene during joint training in Norfolk. She outranked me back then." "She still does," Marlene teased, and they all laughed. Walter's tone turned serious. "We saw war, sacrifice, and loss, but we also saw unity. America meant something deep." "Do you regret serving?" Trump asked. "Never," Walter replied firmly. "But we regret being forgotten." Marlene looked down. "When we retired, there were no calls, no ceremony, no thank you. Just paperwork. Then silence." "There should have been more," Trump murmured. "There still should be," Walter said. "We don't want fame. We want dignity." Trump swallowed. He had often spoken about military strength and honoring troops, but this felt different. It was personal. As dinner wound down, Marlene brought coffee and a tattered notebook. "I've been journaling about the widows in our group," she said, flipping it open. "Names, notes, stories. Some buried husbands after decades of service. Now they live on next to nothing. One friend eats canned soup daily." Trump frowned. "Why aren't they getting help?" "They get pensions," Marlene said. "But it's not enough. Not with rising rent and medical bills." "No one visits," Walter added. "Not government reps, not neighbors. These women are invisible." Marlene's hands shook as she turned another page. One widow, Linda Gates, wrote letters to her husband every day after he passed. She died 2 months ago, alone. The letters were never mailed. Trump felt his throat tighten. These weren't news articles. These were real people who had quietly continued serving through hardship and love. Later, the three sat outside on the porch swing under a quiet Florida sky. The excitement had faded, and the night grew still. Trump looked up. "I've visited bases, toured billion-dollar ships, but none of it compares to this." Walter smiled. "That's because the soul of service isn't found in budgets. It's found here." He tapped his chest. "You're not the first president to visit troops," Marlene said, "but you're the first to sit on this swing." Trump smiled. "I'm glad I did." "Then don't forget what you felt here," Walter said. "When the noise returns, remember the swing. Remember the pot roast. Remember James and Ruth." Trump nodded. He would. Something inside had shifted. Before leaving, he asked to take a short walk with Walter around the block. As they walked, slowly, Walter's cane echoed off the pavement. "This neighborhood used to be filled with Navy families," Walter said. "Now homes are for sale. Most can't afford to stay." "Why?" Trump asked. "Lack of support, loss of purpose. When veterans retire, they lose more than income. They lose meaning." Trump studied the houses. "I thought the VA was there for that." "The VA helps," Walter said, "but it's a life preserver for those already drowning." Trump stopped. "What would help?" Walter turned to him. "Give veterans purpose. Connect them. Let them serve again. Don't just honor them. Empower them." Back inside, Marlene handed Trump an envelope. "A letter I wrote 5 years ago to President Obama. I never mailed it. May I?" Trump asked. She nodded. He read aloud. "Dear Mr. President, my husband and I served proudly, but now we feel like relics. If I could ask for anything, it's not wealth. It's that future generations learn the true meaning of sacrifice, that children know more than war stories. They learn about silent strength and unending service." Trump looked up. "Why didn't you send this?" "I didn't think anyone would care," she said softly. "I care," Trump replied. And she believed him. As he prepared to leave, Walter saluted. This time, Trump saluted first. "No cameras," Walter smiled. "No headlines, just memories. You've given me something no advisor ever has," Trump said. "Truth without a filter. Heart without agenda." Marlene handed him a small box. Inside was a navy blue service pin. "It belonged to my father," Walter said. "It's yours now." Trump held it with care. "I'll keep it close." He meant it. As Marine One lifted into the sky, Walter and Marlene stood hand in hand, waving. Something had changed. Back in D.C., Trump called an urgent meeting with senior staff. They expected policy updates. But he pulled out Marlene's letter. "I want this read into the record." Silence filled the room. Then he shared his vision. A national mentorship program for veterans. A widow's honor fund to support elderly military spouses. A new veterans initiative, empowering them to serve communities once more. "This isn't about politics," Trump said. "It's about James, Ruth, Walter, Marlene." An aide asked, "Sir, what changed your mind?" Trump answered simply, "Dinner." And a week later, during a national address, President Trump began with unexpected words. "I